Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Five. I'm Pastor Steve, and my goal today to help you get your day off to a great start. And so you know that I am convinced that the best way that we can start our day is by spending a little bit of time with God in the study of His Word and in prayer. And so what we do here on First Five is every day I invite you to read one chapter of Scripture together with me. And so together we are reading book by book through various books of the Bible. We recently read through the entire New Testament and now have started into some of the books of the Old Testament, having just completed Genesis and now having jumped into Exodus. And so today we come to Exodus chapter 3. And so I hope that when we're all done, you'll take a few moments and read the whole of Exodus 3. But for the purpose of our lesson, we're going to look at just a portion of that. We'll be looking at verses 7 through 11. So if you have a Bible handy or if you want to look it up on your phone, I would invite you to join me in Exodus chapter 3, beginning in verse 7. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them cry out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? This is a great chapter. You're not going to want to miss any of it. You're going to enjoy very much reading this chapter. First of all, it contains one of the best known stories in the Old Testament, the burning bush. So don't skip over this chapter. You're going to want to read it all. And I love the part where God tells Moses, he sees the bush being burned but not consumed. And he goes up closer to it to see what exactly is going on. And as he gets closer, God says to him, take off your sandals. Why? Because this is holy ground. Up until that moment, it was just a spot in the wilderness, desert and brush. But it has become holy. And it is holy because Moses encounters God there. Are there places in your life that may look ordinary but have become holy to you because you have encountered God in that place? So that's a great initial part of this chapter that I just love, and I think it's so worth taking the time to read through carefully. Then in this section that we just read, we see God speaking to Moses, basically giving him an assignment, a calling. And what God is calling him to is to become his spokesman before Pharaoh. Going and saying to Pharaoh, let my people go. And did you notice how Moses responds? Woohoo! Let's go! Put me in, coach! Nope. Not at all. In fact, he says, who? Me? Who am I to talk to Pharaoh face to face? Now I get it. This was a powerful man. And this was a scary assignment. And Moses apparently did not see himself as as being a great speaker, as being able to communicate well. You almost get the impression that maybe he had a speech impediment or some other challenge that made that difficult for him. Can I ask you, have you ever felt that way? I think it's not uncommon for us to feel as though we don't have all that it would take to do the work that God is calling us to. Now, of course, when God called Moses, he also equipped him. He gave him Aaron to go with him as a partner, as an additional spokesperson. And he gave Moses, spoke into Moses the words that he would need to be able to say. He didn't have to come up with those words on himself. God literally just gave him the message to share with Pharaoh. And if you remember the story, we'll see it as we get into it a little further. Well, the next week or two, we're going to see it. He also empowers Moses to do the miraculous when it was necessary to move the heart of Pharaoh. So, when it happens in our lives that God calls us to something that we may not be sure we are up for, remember Moses, one of the great heroes of our faith. He had his doubts, but God was with him and gave him what he needed, when he needed it, to do the work that God had called him to. Would you join me in prayer? Lord, as we begin to dig into the story of Moses, we love this part where God calls him, and instead of being excited or eager or ready to go, Moses is fearful and he's anxious and he's uncertain and he doesn't really believe that he's got what it takes to do the job. And yet God has called him for a reason. And we know, Lord, that those that you call, you also empower. You give us the gifts, the strength, the power, the miracles, or whatever might be required in order to fulfill the calling you've placed in our lives. So help us, God, like Moses, when we are frightened or anxious or fearful of something you may be calling us to. Help us to step out in faith, trusting that where you guide, you provide. Pray all this in Jesus' holy name. Amen. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. God bless.